Chicago, 1912. The air is thick enough to taste. Coal smoke presses between the bricks. Inside a narrow parlor on Ogden Avenue, a candle burns so low its wick curls like a question mark. A crystal sphere waits on the table, catching the flame and holding it hostage. No chanting, no theatrics. Just a woman in black, with her voice steady and her audience unsure which world she belongs to. Louisa Lindloff makes belief look easy. She knows how to sit still, how to watch, how to make people feel seen. They come to her for comfort: widows, laborers, the superstitious middle class who think she can dial the afterlife like a telephone. And she tells them what they need to hear: that love doesn't end, that death isn't final. The deception isn't summoning ghosts, it's making despair feel temporary. They call her a medium, but the papers will later call her something else. Louisa moves through her house like someone timing her own heartbeat. Her days are filled with attending to her child, her husband, and those looking to find answers from without instead of within. Her worries about her fortune and her annoyance with her life are buried deep within, where she wrestles with her constant need for attention. But her day must go on, and appearances must be upheld. So she continues on, humming while she works, a woman preparing dinner, a mother like any other. But Louisa understands control. She knows people trust what feels gentle. She knows grief is a door you can walk straight through if you keep your face calm. And she also knows what a few grains of arsenic can do once they dissolve in tea. Mornings for Louisa drag gray, and Arthur Lindloff, her husband, tired of luck and short on work, sits at the table like a verdict. He rubs his temples and complains about coins that never add up and customers who pay in whispers instead of money. The sound of his voice fills the small room until there's no air left for Louisa and their son, Arthur Jr. He drags his toy soldiers across the floor, their small boots scraping through the silence his parents wouldn't break. And downstairs, the boarders' cough mark time with Arthur's grumbling, a second heartbeat in the walls. Louisa listens unmoved. She sweeps the stoop, keeps the ledger close the way a miser keeps breath. Arthur hates the ledger she keeps. He hates the neatness that makes his failures look loud. An insurance man makes rounds on the block, selling industrial policies and burial money for people who can't afford to die. Arthur waves him away with a laugh, and the renter treats the salesman's card like it might burn. But Louisa doesn't laugh. She tucks the little card into her ledger. Then she witnesses the signature herself. The premiums are small and paid weekly, so she just passes them along with the rent. Helpful, harmless household economy. The idea of value surviving death feels cleaner to her than living this way. As the days go on, the house acquires a rhythm. Seances by afternoon, coins in the ledger by evening, and Arthur is muttering by habit, the boarders coughing by the hour, and Junior's soldiers clicking across the boards by the minute. Her kitchen hums with ordinary labor. The spoon stirs slow and deliberate, and Arthur drinks his tea as if it's his duty. He stares at her as if she's locked a door he can't open, while Louisa wipes the dining room table clean of crumbs and of the noise and the names. From the other room came the thud of a dropped toy and a boy's laugh. For Louisa, It just felt too bright for the house that held it. It begins as curiosity. One afternoon, while reading a newspaper left behind by a client, Louisa lingers on a story just a little too long from another city. It was a widow accused of murder by T. The word arsenic glints on the page like a secret only she understands. The article says it's odorless, tasteless, a powder that obeys. It fascinates her, not for what it kills, but for how quietly it does so. She tears the article out and folds it into her pocket. That night, she dreams of order, the kind that comes when no one argues, when no one questions, and no one drinks without gratitude. And the ledger balances. One day, she passes the apothecary, and she goes in to ask for rat poison. The clerk doesn't hesitate. Women buy it all the time. She tells him her husband has seen rats in the pantry. The clerk nods, wraps it in paper, and slides it across the counter. Her fingers still slightly trembling. The clerk, not knowing why, smiles as he makes change. At home, the paper still sits on the table beside the kettle. Arthur asks what she's reading. She folds it and puts it away before answering, "News. Mostly about other people's misfortunes." He laughs and asks when supper will be ready. She says, "Soon." The city moves outside, carriages rattling, dogs barking, voices trading gossip. But inside, Louisa hums to herself. She measures tea, sugar, and something finer, watching the grains dissolve, and that almondy smell starts to rise. Still, something inside her hesitates, though. A flicker of thought, the thin voice that once belonged to a conscience. She takes a glance at the ledger, and her curiosity turns clinical. She's not angry, but now she is resolved. That evening, she speaks to him gently and kindly, the way one might soothe a stubborn child. And when she pours her tea, her hands do not tremble, and the apothecary's label lies folded beneath the kettle, its print smudged by steam, and the powder's taste vanishes like a secret told in confidence. Louisa sits at the table and listens to the city, hooves on a stone, a drunk singing to himself, the world's ordinary pulse beating on without her, and the hesitation from earlier is now gone completely. What's left is the calculation of how she's going to balance that ledger, and just how much she's going to enjoy the quiet. By early spring, the whispers kind of grow teeth. The neighbors' gossip, though just rumor and hearsay, catches the ear of the police. It gets loud enough to where one morning, a constable decides to visit. He's just asking some polite questions about insurance, about tea, and who last visited, and Louisa smiles through it all, but it makes the air feel thinner. At the funeral for dear old Arthur, the cold sleet turns the ground to mud. Louisa stands still while lilies sag against the casket. For a heartbeat, her mask slips, and she almost laughs, the sound twisting into a choked sob before she swallows it down. The neighbors whispered anyway. A husband dead too soon. A wife a little too calm to mourn. And each word feeling like frostbite that's creeping slow and deep. Weeks later, while visiting the market, the voices seem to hush when she walks by. The grocer fumbles her change. "Arsenic," they whisper. And then the insurance check arrives. Louisa signs without flourish. Settled. It feels like absolution inked on paper. By the thaw of 1913, she sells the house on Ogden Avenue for one on Milwaukee Avenue just up the road, which offers new silence and her new life. But that gossip travels faster than her wagon. Louisa continues to endure her boarder's chatter, nods at the mention of his small insurance policy, and writes in her ledger longer than necessary. Arthur Jr. hums his father's tune until the sound curdles in her chest. She touches his hair, feels the old ache of love, then hears that laugh, the same laugh, and the moment dies. Now, with 2 teacups waiting on the table, her hand trembles once before it steadies, knowing what she's going to do now. She lights the candle, and outside Milwaukee Avenue hisses with wheels and rain. But inside, the faint smell of almonds begins waiting its turn, with a silence long enough for the listener to lean in and realize this isn't over. By this time, though, Chicago starts to exhale a little uneasily because the deaths start to sound the same. Sudden, quiet, unremarkable, except for the faint almond scent that lingers in the home. A clerk on the west side collapses at his desk. A tenant 2 streets over dies in her sleep. The city's coroner calls it coincidence. The reporters call it fate. But in the alleys and boarding houses, people start to whisper one name. The stories, they ripple through the taverns and tenements. A woman who could see death coming, they say. And a medium who doesn't just speak of ghosts. They follow her. The rumor grows of its own body, drifting from parlor to parlor until even the police start listening a little closer. By this time, the detectives have pieced together the scattered death like bones under fog, and every path leads back to the same block, the same woman, with a quiet smile and perfect handwriting. Not even then could one dismiss the pattern because it was just too clean to ignore. The dead were insured, the home, the bodies, almonds, and the grieving medium who always seems to outlive her clients. One detective decides to do what we would call a stakeout. He watches her draw the curtains, sees the shadow of her hand as it moves across the table, and slowly, out of the earth, the almonds grow, beginning faint, but the sweetness, it doesn't belong to the living. And now, as the city begins to whisper even louder, this ghost story is no longer about the dead, but about her, Louisa. Back at the precinct, the detective, who is beginning to smell the trail, tells another officer something's off. The report lands on the clerk's desk, joined by others with the same sweet scent written in the margins. Now the rumor has become paperwork as it turns into evidence. Louisa now finds that the story is no longer hers to tell, and that Chicago has started writing it for her. In the morning, the Tribune prints a small notice about a string of sudden deaths, causing every window in town to listen, and every knock suspicious. And the reporter hesitates over the headline, unsure if he's writing crime, folklore, or prophecy himself. There's a note on the detective's desk from the coroner. Death. Same symptoms, same scent. The math is starting to add up, and Louisa's ledger is starting to show its weakness. The files arrive on his desk next. Manila coffins stacked in quiet judgment on the detective's desk. Inside are the names, dates, policies, and testimonies that do not align. Each page seems to smell of ink and almonds, as though the evidence itself remembers. The pattern has a pulse now, steady and cold, a husband with sunstroke, a lodger who passed in his sleep, children buried with flowers that may have wilted too soon. The cause is different, but in the coroner's notes, one phase repeats like a curse, over and over. At this point, the detective doesn't need her confession because the story writes itself. Each name feels colder than the last, each claim check heavier. What he's reading isn't history, it's Louisa's ledger, the paper trail, the money trail, leading right back to her. Morning breaks gray and low over Milwaukee Avenue. The snowmelt slicks the cobblestones, rejecting silhouettes. Neighbors, officers, and the curious, drawn by rumor, justice, and morbid awe. They've all come to taste the air and its smell of sweetness that they've all read about. Before anyone can knock, the front door opens, and Louisa comes to the threshold. She looks neither startled nor afraid, only expectant, because she's been waiting for this exact moment. The moment when the constable, the detectives, raise the warrant, written by the clues left behind by her own ledger. As the detectives watch from the curb, he hears a woman in the crowd whisper a prayer and hears the innocent voice of a child ask if a ghost can be arrested. No one answers. The air is just too thick. Louisa's eyes linger on her front door and the furniture left inside that once held her seances, and something unreadable crosses her face. Not guilt, but fear. Something closer to recognition. She meets the detective's eyes for a single breath, and that silence between them feels almost like understanding, a quiet acknowledgement that justice and penance are sharing the same face. This wasn't just an arrest. It's an ending wrapped in ritual. Chicago finally gets to exhale, and coming full circle, Louisa begins summoning the spirits. Beyond the crowd, the coal smoke and the wind twist together, swallowing her name until it's nothing but echo. The sounds linger, the boots fade, the breath of the city steadies again. Knowing that the fortune teller, who not only predicts death, but brings it, is finally out of the picture. They say that she was clever, that she fooled the city because the city wanted to be fooled, that faith and fear make poor detectives. They still write her name in papers. We do it on podcasts. And the world will read and listen to it over and over and over for breakfast, before going to bed, and everyone will shake their heads at another monster who looked like a mother. For the love of money and her own, I'd say, peace, she killed even those that meant the most to her. And these files, they've yellowed, and the witnesses are dead, and the city changed, the skyline grew tall, the sins grew deeper and broader. It is Chicago, after all. But somewhere in the dim back room of memory, that candle, it still burns low, its wick curling like a question mark, and the air sweet but wrong. So if you made it this far, well, congratulations. You've just spent, I don't know how many minutes this is, inside one of Chicago's darkest seances. And you can find more nightmares and maybe a little redemption, maybe, at paulgnewton.com. And the merch isn't haunted. Well, maybe. We do have a hoodie that's kind of weird. So if you got a hate mail or praise or a theory, they're all welcome. Email me at paulg@paulgnewton.com, and I'll read them all. I promise. Eventually. Thanks.